Hey, welcome back. Imagine this. You're in a peaceful fantasy village when suddenly an ORC, a sworn enemy of humans, shows up out of nowhere. You grab your weapon, ready to fight, but then you notice he's holding a human child in his arms. And instead of attacking, he begs you, please save this girl. Why would a demon risk his life for a human kid? And what secret is he hiding? Let's dive in. The entire battlefield is scorched, the ground is littered with arrows, and the bodies of defeated warriors lie on ground. A bleeding orc named Zaid is approached by a woman in armor named Daria. She sighs heavily. She remarks that she didn't realize her opponent could cause her so much trouble. Daria adds that Zaid has caused most of the commanders of the demon army to scatter. However, one way or another, their army is defeated. Standing over the creature's prostrate body, Daria announces that the humans have won. She draws her sword, the orc's eye flashes. Daria says that the black demon has gained her respect, and she wants to let him have the last word. The one lies on his back in silence. His mind flashes back to someone else's face and someone else's words to him. He is strong and will be able to hold off his enemies, fight for them. He also remembered the insult of being called an ugly boar, only thinking about blood and meat. Looking up into the sky, Zaid remarks that he always wanted to be loved. Shocked by his words, Daria freezes without striking, and the monster continues. He longed so much to feel loved for once, to be needed not because of his power. Daria says nothing and only grips the weapon tighter. The blade cleaves the air. 7 years pass. In a dense coniferous forest, the trio gathers mushrooms. A girl with glasses named Estelle asks about a band of orcs. Her elf companion, named Alicia, smiling, explains that the surviving monsters from the demon army have gathered into a gang and are now raiding villages nearby. She adds that usually the village guards manage to repel the attacks. However, in the last month, already 5 settlements have simply disappeared from the face of the earth. It is already clear that these attacks are not the work of the usual rabble. Still cheerfully, the girl informs that the guild has already raised the alarm and now sends adventurers to patrol the surrounding villages. Estelle asks if this is the reason for Alicia's sudden return to the settlement. She answers in the affirmative. A boy named Cress enters the conversation. He nervously remarks that it must be dangerous in the forest if that is the case. With his basket clutched fearfully to him, the little boy suggests that they go home soon. Alicia winks at him, asking him not to be afraid. She places a hand on her weapon and adds that as long as she, a rank A adventurer, is with them, there is nothing to worry about. Abruptly, snatching up her sword, Alicia uses a technique called Windblade. She directs her strike at the tree, demonstrating how she will chop her intended enemies in half. The trunk falls. Cress admires her sister enthusiastically. She smiles smugly. Estelle approaches Alicia and gently reminds her that it is not a good idea to chop down trees. She reproaches the girl, noting that she has forgotten the rules instilled in her from childhood when she lived in the city. Alicia is embarrassed and replies that she just wanted to calm their brother Cress down. Cress suddenly listens and asks what the sound was. Alicia shrugs off the noise as a falling tree. The trio hears the sound getting closer and turn towards the forest. Under their astonished gazes, someone grabs a tree with the palm of his hand, breaking it. Zaid comes out into the clearing, clutching a small bundle tightly to him. Behind this, the stumps left from the trees can be seen. The trio shrieks, and the monster raises its eyes to them. Alicia rushes forward, ordering her family to hide behind her. She snatches up her weapon, noticing that the orc has appeared as if on cue. Alicia adds that the monster will be out of luck today, as she is on guard. Alicia uses the crossed wind blade technique. Zaid looks at her perplexed and bends over. A vortex forms over the forest, caused by the storm. Zaid covers with her body the bundle she holds in her hands. Alicia decisively brings her blade to bear, using the fire sword. She strikes the orc, but to her amazement, not a scratch is left on the monster's body. Alicia can't believe it has such durable armor, and wonders who it even is. Zaid looks at a tense Alicia, and shows the bundle he is so protective of. The trio stares in shock at the tiny little girl slumbering in the monster's arms. Zaid pleads to save the little girl. The huge monster kneels down, holding the tiny girl tightly to his chest, while Alicia continues to point her blade at him. In a village in the house of an elder named Magdalena, the trio crowds around the bed on which the sick girl sleeps. A cold compress rests on her forehead, droplets of sweat running down her face. A tired Magdalena realizes that the poor girl has black fever. This disease will be hard to cure. Magdalena turns to the gathered crowd. She wonders what has become of the orc. Alicia replies that the monster was tied up in an underground dungeon where the bars are made of magical iron. Magdalena remarks that this, except by magic, cannot be destroyed. Such a task is impossible for a stupid orc because these monsters can't use magic. Alicia praises this solution, but Magdalena cuts her off abruptly. She informs her that she will figure out what to do with the orc herself. Magdalena orders the adventurer and Cress to keep an eye on the prisoner. A stunned Alicia incredulously asks if Magdalena will not kill the monster. She replies that she is considering it, and coldly asks if the girl has any more questions. Alicia is embarrassed. She recalls how her father, before he left, promised to return once he had dealt with the demons. The adventuress quietly replies that she has nothing more to ask. Alicia and Cress leave, and Estelle is about to follow them. Magdalena says she will start preparing the potion right away and asks Estelle to help her. Estelle wonders why the orc kidnapped the human girl and why he is trying to save her. Magdalena looks at the sick child and replies that she is not human at all. Alicia and Cress walk down the corridor leading to the underground dungeon. As they approach the dungeon, Alicia stops when she hears someone shouting war cries. A whole crowd has crawled into the orc's cage. They insult the prisoner, try to find out why he came to the village, and threaten to kill him. Zaid is on his knees, his hands shackled. His entire body is pierced with arrows and bleeding. Alicia, shrieking, runs into the dungeon. She asks what is even going on here. One of the men turns to her and wonders admiringly if the girl really captured the orc. The crowd echoes his words, praising Alicia and saying it was an act worthy of an adventurer. The woman squints at the orc, noting that if the monster is left alive, there's no telling what this one will do. She offers to kill the monster now. Zaid looks up wearily and asks if the girl will recover. Alicia doesn't have time to answer anything before someone slaps the monster in the face again, demanding that it shut up immediately. Someone from the crowd resents that the orc's muscles are too hard, barely pierced by the blade. A man in the crowd asks for a hammer to be brought to him from Lauren's forge. He wants to crush the monster's head. Alicia, in a trembling voice, orders everyone to stop immediately. The adventuress informs them that Magdalena has forbidden anyone to interfere until she has made a decision. Her words are met with a flurry of discontent. Some don't believe that the elder herself is involved, and others don't understand what there is to think about. The orc's head should be cut off, and that's the end of it. The woman, who had been trying to kill the prisoner before, pulls out her staff. She is ready to kill the monster with her own hands. The woman points the staff at the orc, and the orc is enveloped in electric shocks. Alicia rushes forward, begging for it to stop. She knocks the staff out of the woman's hands, and it falls to the floor. The woman asks, perplexed, why is the adventurer protecting the orc? The woman's husband and son died at the hands of monsters during the war. She reminds her that Alicia's father suffered the same fate and wonders if the adventurer wants revenge. She sobs and clenches her fists tightly. In her mind, she admits that she would have killed the monster herself. Her bitter thoughts are interrupted by a faint voice. Zaid asks her to tell him if the girl named Nanoa will survive. Alicia looks at the monster confused. The one adds that he doesn't care about his life, but it is important for him to know how the child is doing. Alicia asks why he's going to all this. Why is he going to certain death for some girl? Zaid doesn't have time to answer. Suddenly, there's a rumbling sound from outside. The heads of those gathered turn at the sound. The crowd is perplexed as to what is happening. Was it an explosion, and why are screams being heard? Alicia freezes. She can't believe this has happened. The adventuress rushes towards the exit. Cress anxiously calls out to her, but Alicia orders him to stay where he is. Alicia is joined by a few more people. Cress looks at them fearfully. A squad of heavily armed orcs rushes through the streets of the village. The elves freeze in place. Some decide that the monsters were brought by their prisoner and wish they had killed the orc immediately. Alicia orders the crowd to pull themselves together and hold their defenses. She is the first to fearlessly run to attack the orcs. The adventuress uses one technique after another, the Sword of Storms. Heavenly Thunder Sword. Suddenly, someone raises a bony hand and casts a silent spell. Alicia stops confused. The orcs look around themselves, not finding a scratch. Alicia realizes with horror that the magic has dissipated. The monsters chuckle and continue to advance. The fingers of a bony hand slowly curl as its owner counts the villagers. The skeleton, grinning contentedly, notes how many precious elven bodies there are. The creature of bones shouts out happily that they have finally discovered the village of the Thousand-Year Witch. It orders the monsters not to kill anyone, as every item is incredibly valuable. The skeleton adds that the men can be eaten after their livers are ripped out. The orc army breaks out into a terrible howl. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Cress, who has been left all alone, stands at the very bars. He does not know what to do. The frightened boy realizes that the same band of orc bandits that Alicia told him about has invaded the village. Cress stands with his back to the cage, too absorbed in his worries to notice the captive slowly rising. The orc's eye flashes and the monster gets to its feet. Cress turns around. He freezes, looking at the huge orc. It breaks its shackles with a violent movement. Cress opens his mouth in shock. Zaid slides open the bars of his prison, which give way with a creaking and clanking sound. Cress's face contorts with fear. Zaid pulls his huge hand toward him, and Cress prepares to die. But Zaid pats him on the head and promises that he'll be back in no time. The streets of the village are littered with the bodies of elves. Orcs stand behind their skeletal superior. He casts spells on Alicia, who is holding on by her own strength. She is breathing heavily, too exhausted from the fight. The skeleton casts core attraction. The adventuress falls to the ground. The impact knocks the air out of her lungs. Alicia knows this is not good. The leader of the band of orc bandits is most likely Lich Ray himself. He is one of the higher demons who wields all kinds of higher magic. Physical attacks against him are completely useless, and the silent spell that Ray has cast on Alicia prevents her from casting sorcery. Alicia struggles to raise herself up. She sees the remaining elves trying to fight the orcs. It is noticeable that the strength of the village defenders is already at its limit. At this rate, they will not last much longer. Alicia raises her head and is surprised. Ray is also shocked and can't hide it. A huge figure walks out to the battle site. Alicia recognizes their prisoner, an orc, and asks in amazement how he managed to break free from his chains. Zaid walks right up to Ray. The latter notices that he is not from the band of orc bandits and wonders where he came from. Zaid does not dignify him with an answer. An enraged Ray uses extermination blast against him. Zaid hides in the smoke from the attack. Ray calls the orc an ugly pig. He can't believe that the monster dared to ignore the words of a supreme demon. Ray adds that such behavior is worthy of death. But then out of the smoke, Zaid rushes at the demon. Ray is shocked. Alicia is also confused, for the monster was able to withstand a direct hit from a powerful spell. Ray exclaims that this is impossible. He shoots fireballs at Zaid. These explode against the monster's body, however, causing no damage. Ray wonders what kind of monster is before him. Suddenly he remembers. Incredible stamina, horns, black skin. Looking at the demon, orc looming inexorably at the demon. Ray asks confusedly if he is really someone named Black. But Ray never got a chance to speak. A powerful fist strike smashes through Ray's skull. Zaid throws Ray's bony body away from him with force. Ray flips several times in the air. Ray's remains fall to the ground. The orc bandits are about to pounce on Zaid, but the man turns to them and orders them to stay out of his way and get out of here immediately. For a second, the army of astonished monsters tries to think of something, and then they scatter with a shriek. These break through the fence in their haste to get away. Zaid watches them go. Then he turns to Alicia, who has barely been able to sit up. Zaid asks if the adventuress is okay. The exhausted Alicia asks in a trembling voice why the orc is protecting them, but then Zaid suddenly falls heavily to the ground. Alicia jumps to her feet, not realizing what has happened. She leans over the orc. Magdalena walks over to them. She notices that after so many kills, the monster's fists have gained strength equal to a holy or demonic sword. She adds that her staff, as well as the defense of Lich Ray, are powerless against this orc. However, nothing else was expected of the demon who fell, slaying the heroic warrior. The elder realizes that their former captive is the famous black orc Zaid. Daria still does not strike the orc. She draws back her weapon and instead stabs the ground next to the monster's head. Zaid slowly opens his eyes. He wonders why Daria didn't finish him off. Suddenly, a drop falls on his face. Tears roll down Daria's face in a hail. Zaid asks why is she crying. Daria replies that she and the monster are very much alike. Zaid confusedly interjects. Daria stammeringly explains that she has had to be strong all her life because she is the only heroine in this world with angel blood in her veins. Everyone always told her that only she could do it. Since childhood, the girl was forced to fight, and she didn't even know any other life. Zaid lifts herself up from the ground. Daria, standing with her back to her opponent, wipes away her tears. Suddenly, a cheerful Daria announces that she has made up her mind and tells Zaid that he will be her husband. Zaid is speechless, unable to understand what the warrior means. Daria rests her hands at her sides with a smile and adds that it was not a question. Turning to Zaid, she tells him to get up. The war is over, and now the former enemies have a chance to leave undetected. Daria was incredibly persistent and always solved everything on her own. How to hold the wedding, where to live, how to spend the days. Daria was always leading Zaid, never letting him get a word in edgewise. Even if the house was shabby, even if the orc had to go fishing, or digging hot springs, Zaid owed Daria nothing and could have left at any time. However, He stayed, perhaps because of witnessing Daria's tears. Zaid understood well the girl's feelings, her loneliness, and did not at all want her to cry anymore. On the contrary, Zaid wished she would smile more often. He always felt at ease when Daria laughed. So Zaid tried to please his wife, to give her a flower, desperately embarrassed, and admire her sincere smile. Zaid was pleased to feel that he was the cause of Daria's good mood. Once the couple was sitting on a hill admiring the night sky. They even saw a shooting star. Daria excitedly told them that if they made a wish at that moment, it would definitely come true. That was why her elven magic teacher used to make elixirs using the light of the caught stars. Zaid, looking at his wife carefully, asked if she had wished for anything. For a moment Daria was silent. Then looking directly into the orc's eyes, the woman replied seriously that she wanted a child with Zaid. The answer shocked the orc. He covered Daria's small hand with his huge palm. In that moment, Zaid truly believed that this was the connection he had been searching for throughout his life. But the couple's happiness didn't last long. Daria began coughing up blood. The completely weakened woman lay in bed, and the orc nursed her back to health. An angel and a demon could not have a child together. It was simply impossible. But Daria, with a sickly blush all over her face and a weak smile, promised that everything would be all right. She would protect their baby. After all, she is a mother. With each passing day, Daria's body became more and more frail and weak. However, she continued to gently stroke her belly as if she was handing over her life to their baby. Daria did keep her promise. The proof of that was the tiny baby girl, now screaming on the pillow. The baby was born healthy and strong. Cradling his daughter to his chest, Zaid leaned over his wife's bed. Daria had no strength left at all. She faintly asked her husband to show Nanoa, their baby girl, the world. Daria added that she did not want their daughter to have to spend her life in hiding. She had the blood of both parents in her veins, so she could be anything she wanted to be, a hero or a demon lord. Zaid listened attentively to his wife's instructions. She asked the orc to show their daughter the breadth of the world, all its beauty. She wanted the girl to choose her own path, without anyone imposing their advice on her. Zaid promised to fulfill her wish. Daria smiled weakly in return and held out her hand. Zaid gently took it in his palm. Tears flowed from his wife's eyes. She apologized for not being able to be there for her family. Zaid placed a cross on the spot where he had buried Daria and stood still, looking at the lonely grave. Before she died, his wife had told the orc that if he met someone who would love him, he didn't need to remain faithful to her. She added that everything would be fine. Daria was sure that there would be someone who would love Zaid, for her husband was the most beautiful man in the world. Zaid was kneeling in front of the cross. All around it was covered with flowers. He was distracted from his grief by the crying of a child. Zaid opens his eyes. He looks around in bewilderment. He doesn't know where he is. But then he sees his daughter. He calls for the girl and gets out of bed. But then someone notices that the little girl is getting better. Zaid turns around and meets the elder's eyes. She informs him that she has given Nanoa a potion made by the noble high elves. Magdalena finds it amazing that the heroine, thought to have fallen in the final battle, has given birth to a child by a demon. Zaid's eyes flash in surprise. The elder asks not to be offended and explains that she saw the orc's memories with the help of a magic mirror. She adds that such vigilance is understandable, as demons and elves are longtime enemies. Magdalena crosses the room. She remarks that it is simply amazing how much Zaid has endured, traveled the entire continent without sleep, tirelessly searching for a cure for a sick girl, endured the attacks of peasants, and even received a lich ray projectile. However, the orc had to sleep for a couple hours, and he was as good as new. The elder settles into a chair and marvels at Zaid's reserve of strength. The man stands in front of the elven woman. The orc thanks her for saving Nanoa. Magdalena dismisses his words and asks why Zaid did all this. With a fist on his head, the elder wonders why the orc didn't hate his daughter, who had gotten his beloved wife killed. He could have gotten rid of the burden at any time. Zaid replies that Nanoa has never been a burden to him. He adds that he is just a stupid orc, who doesn't understand complicated things. Daria also once asked Zaid the same thing, and the orc then, without hesitating for a second, answered exactly the same. Daria gave birth to Nanoa as a mother, and the orc is raising the girl as a father. She is their shared treasure. The elder dryly replies that she understood him. She covers her eyes and remembers how little Daria, standing on the hedge, asked Magdalena if it was true that a shooting star grants any wish. The latter replied that it did, and inquired what the little girl wanted to wish for. Daria thought for a moment, and with a smile replied that it was a secret. Awakened from her memories, the elder asks if Zaid wants to stay to live in the village. 7 years ago, many able-bodied elves died during the final battle. If the attacks on the village continue, the villagers will not be able to hold their defenses. No help could be expected from the humans either, for after the fall of the demon army, they were mired in infighting. Looking directly into Zaid's eyes, Magdalena suggested that the orcs settle in the village and become a bodyguard for the elves. The one stares back confused. The elder adds that Nanoa's illness came about because of fatigue from endless traveling. It is better for Zaid to settle down somewhere with his daughter until the girl grows up a little more. Nanoa sleeps peacefully, and Magdalena remarks that sometimes you need to slow down a bit and stop rushing to learn about the world. Zaid briefly refuses, explaining his decision by saying that his presence will only bring trouble to the village. The elder calmly accepts his answer, saying that there is nothing to be done here anyway. With an innocent smile, Magdalena informs him that Zaid must pay 1 billion gold pieces. Zaid throws his head up in amazement, not believing his ears. The elder nonchalantly explains that universal potions are not just lying around. Moreover, the labor of the world's only high elf and rare ingredients for potions are expensive, so the price is more than justified. Magdalena adds that if the orc leaves, he must pay cash. With a sly smile, the elder remarks that if Zaid has no way to pay, then he must stay in the village and work off his debts. Zaid could barely lift his sagging jaw, drops of sweat rolling down his face. Nanoa sighs sweetly and sits up in bed, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Zaid turns to her in a flash. The daughter greets her father cheerfully and says she is hungry and wants to eat the hare. Zaid strokes the girl's head affectionately. She smiles sweetly. Zaid replies that he understands and adds that they will stay in the village for the time being. Soon the orc and his daughter are standing in front of an old house with a tower. Zaid and Nanoa are sound asleep. The girl is on the bed and the orc is on the boardwalk. Nanoa opened her eyes and rubbed them sleepily with her hand. Zaid continued to snore. The girl is surprised to realize that she is not outside. Here only she remembers that they have moved to the village. A butterfly flies into the house through a gap in the wall. Nanoa smiles enthusiastically, admiring the beautiful insect. The butterfly flies over Zaid's face. He is just inhaling, and the poor insect is sucked right up his nose. The girl lets out a loud gasp. The orc inhales, then sneezes loudly. The old house can't take it anymore. The sisters walk down a path in the woods. Yesterday, the elder had asked Alicia to show the orc and the girl who had taken up residence in the abandoned house by the mill, the neighborhood, and the forest, and to explain the rules of the village. Magdalena added that she relies on the girl. Alicia is not happy with this decision. She wonders what the elder was even thinking when she allowed the demon to stay in the settlement. Estelle tells her that there are rumors floating around the village that the girl is the daughter of the heroine, who was Magdalena's apprentice. She adds that it's hard to believe that there was an affair between the warrior who saved humanity and the monster. Estelle wistfully remarks that the orc did protect them, though. She doesn't think he's one of those scary monsters. Alicia throws in irritably that the girl is somehow overly optimistic. A great many of the villagers disagree with the elder's decision, as well as the adventurer herself. Suddenly, some sound catches the sister's attention. Estelle asks, "What is that noise?" And Alicia realizes that the rumbling came from the direction of the mill. She decides that the orc is on the rampage, and the girls rush to the house of the monster and her daughter. They are greeted by ruins. Alicia nervously wonders what happened. All that remains of the house is a pile of bricks and rubble. Just then, an orc rises from the rubble, scratching the back of his head in puzzlement. Nanoa laughs so hard that tears start to flow from her eyes. She's rolling on the ground. Estelle, stammering, asks what happened. The girl cheerfully tells her that her daddy inhaled a butterfly while he was snoring, sneezed, and the house exploded. Nanoa is flooded with laughter again. Suddenly, the girl scoots behind her father's back and peeks out fearfully from behind his arm. He looks at her perplexed. Nanoa fearfully says that there are intruders in the house, maybe even thieves. The elven girls watch the scene in silence. Zaid replies to his daughter that the girls have nursed Nanoa back to health. He strokes the girl's head and suggests that she say hello to the elven women. The daughter announces that she will greet them as best she can. She pulls herself into a line and says it is a pleasure to meet you. She introduces herself and adds that she is 4 years old. Then, in front of her surprised sisters, she bows low and asks them not to hurt her. The elven girls are amused by the girl. Zaid praises her daughter for saying hello so politely. Estelle says her name and introduces her sister. She adds that she is happy to meet her too. Nanoa extends her palm to her, and they exchange a handshake. Alicia smiles sincerely as she watches the little girl. But then her face changes dramatically. She frowns, angry at herself for forgetting herself. The adventuress mentally reminds herself that Nanoa is half demon, which means there is no telling what to expect from her. Alicia clenches her fists tightly, determined to keep her ears open. She abruptly informs her that the elder has asked to show the orc and the girl the forest. The adventuress coldly asks if they can pack up quickly. Zaid nods. Soon the orc, holding his daughter tightly in his arms, follows his sisters through the bountiful forest. Estelle explains that the elves live in harmony with nature, so they have established a number of rules to avoid disturbing the thicket unnecessarily. She says that it is not allowed to hunt alone, but there is a special day for that, when everyone goes out together and takes strictly according to the ration. Estelle explains that if you treat the forest with gratitude and take care of it, you can share gifts with them, such as hares and deer. Nanoa, hanging off the orc's arm, says cheerfully that she loves hares. Estelle says with a smile that these ones are very cute. The girl informs her that bunnies have very tasty brains, and the expression on the elf's face changes. The group arrives at the site of the mushroom colonies. Alicia announces that it is okay to pick mushrooms, but only when necessary. The adventuress sternly reminds them that there are also poisonous species growing in the forest. She holds up 2 different mushrooms. Alicia offers Zaid and Nanoa to choose which of these is edible. The orc takes both mushrooms from the elven woman and looks at it carefully. Then, to the sisters' horror, he pops both of them into his mouth at once. He informs them that these are both edible. The girl fearfully replies that the mushrooms were poisonous. Estelle anxiously asks if Zaid is feeling well. After all, this species is used as poison for bears. Alicia gloomily remarks that the elders of the guild told her that poison does not affect orcs, so there is nothing to worry about. Zaid looks back at his daughter and asks her to still talk about mushrooms. He wants Nanoa to eat only safe food. Alicia is surprised, but agrees and asks her to memorize what she says. The sisters explain to the orc and the girl how to differentiate between types of mushrooms. They don't notice that they have observers. Elves hide behind tree trunks and look angrily at Zaid and his daughter. They curse the demons. Nanoa tastes the fruit from a Japanese pepper tree called sansho. The pungency makes the girl sweat. Estelle shows the orc and his daughter a fruit garden. In a flower field, Zaid wears wreaths while he watches a butterfly. The sisters and their companions walk down to the river. Estelle explains that it is home to trout and chub. She notices that it's getting close to lunchtime and suggests they grab a bite to eat right on the bank. Estelle adds that she has brought some seasonings with her. Nanoa calls out to the girls. She informs them that Zaid wants to give them a treat as a thank you. Alicia perplexedly interjects. The orc steps into the water and brings his hand in. Looking closely, Zaid slaps his palm hard against the surface of the river. Waves rise, and then the stunned fish float up. Estelle marvels at the rich catch. Alicia, on the other hand, hesitantly asks if the orc knows how to cook. Zaid quickly enough finishes with the cooking. He offers the elves his specialty, a star chamomile burger. The orc has chopped up the trout, along with the bones and innards, with the strength of his grip. Condiments are for wimps, and this dish allows you to experience the true flavor of natural ingredients. The severed head of the fish only adds to the festive mood. The sisters wrinkle their brows in disgust. A radiant Nanoa serves a portion for Alicia and wishes her a pleasant appetite. Alicia accepts the dish without enthusiasm. She slowly brings the food to her mouth. The girl's sweet smile makes her unable to refuse. Alicia resolutely eats it. The taste does not please her. Bones and scales crunch on her teeth, and the smell of fish innards fills her mouth. The adventuress chews the treat with difficulty. Estelle, plucking up her courage, walks right up to Zaid. She says indignantly that this dish is not even food. This food is a real insult to cooking. The orc looks at her in amazement. Nanoa eats the fisheye with gusto, saying how delicious it tastes. Estelle jumps up to her, reprimanding her for being tricked. The girl interjects in surprise. Estelle announces that she is about to show them what real food is. She orders Zaid to catch more fish. Estelle recites each of her actions as she cooks. First of all, the scales must be carefully peeled off. Then the insides must be removed, and the carcass must be cut in half. Now it's time to grind pepper and salt, mix it with olive oil and juice of fresh fruits. After half of the fish should be immersed in the marinade. And then fry skin side down, and the dish is ready. Estelle cooked trout with herbs and citrus flavor. The skin is crispy and the meat is tender. The flavor is a bit brackish, but the abundance of oil mitigates that. Estelle also added wild garlic that grows by the river. The dish is the work of a true master. Nanoa stares in awe at the finished fish. The girl is drooling. Estelle, serve her a plate of food. Nanoa admiringly notices the incredibly delicious smell. She takes a bite, and the girl's world literally turns upside down. Shocked by the dish, Nanoa announces that she has had an epiphany and realized that her daddy's cooking is not good. Zaid flies up in horror. The girl, meanwhile, gorges herself on the fish and even eats the extra. Soon the food is just a memory. Nanoa yawns and settles down on her father's knee. Estelle gently asks if the girl wants to sleep. Alicia notices that the girl has eaten a lot. Estelle says that they have gone around all the important places and now it is time to go back to the village. Zaid picks up the sweetly sleeping daughter in her arms. The companions walk through the forest towards the house. Zaid suddenly apologizes. Alicia turns around perplexedly at him. Zaid explains that his cooking was very much to Daria's liking. She always said that his food was much tastier than the rations in the human army. Daria remarked that you could feel the freshness of the insides. Estelle smiles, wondering what the warriors were fed. She apologizes embarrassedly to Zaid, saying she shouldn't have spoken so harshly of the orc cuisine. He quickly looks around and adds that since he is an orc, he only knows how to raise orc cubs. He alone cannot make a Nano a human. However, the girl has human blood in her, so she can live as a human. The sisters listen attentively, wondering where Zaid is going with this. The orc asks them to teach him how to cook like a human, and generally explain what they eat, what clothes they wear, and all the other details. Zaid confesses that he wants to raise Nanoa so that the girl can choose her own path. Estelle instantly agrees, adding that they are all from the same village now. Alicia, on the other hand, frowns. She thinks again of her father, who went off to war to fight for the future, but never returned. Alicia hisses through her teeth that it is not fair. A tear rolls down her face, and she bitterly asks why the orc is even still alive. Estelle turns to her worriedly. Zaid looks at the girl in shock. Alicia wants to talk about her father, but is unable to finish. She angrily blurts out that demons killed her dad. At the exclamation, Nanoa opens her eyes fearfully and flinches. She immediately starts crying to the point of tears. Alicia clucks her tongue irritably and abruptly turns around and runs away. Estelle gently apologizes to Nanoa, noting that the little girl must have been very frightened. She also apologizes to Zaid as well. The elf explains that Alicia lost her father in the war. The orc replies that he understands how it feels, having lost a loved one himself. He strokes his daughter's head affectionately. Alicia walks through the forest and sits down heavily on a tree stump and lowers her head sadly. She bitterly remarks that she is disgusted that she could say such a thing in front of a small child. A sudden voice startles the adventuress, making her jump in place. Someone says that they share her feelings. Turning around, Alicia sees a whole crowd of elves, with serious, even scowling faces. She nervously asks what they're doing here. The man admits that the elves have been following the orc, and were even thinking of massacring him right in the forest. Alicia tensely listens to him. The woman who tried to kill Zaid while still in the dungeon says again that the demons robbed her of her husband and son. She adds that she doesn't care what the elder says and that she can't accept the presence of an orc, but something has changed. One of the elves covers his eyes and says that they were unable to attack. Alicia looks at them in surprise. The man continues, explaining that once they watched the orc, it became clear to them that these creatures are also capable of appreciating someone as much as the elves themselves. Alicia gets tears in her eyes. The elf admits that things would be much easier if he could just hate Zaid, yet they are similar in many ways. He asks sadly, what are they going to do now? Alicia resolutely wipes her eyes and informs him that she has an idea. Zaid and Nanoa walk back towards the house. Suddenly, the girl lets out a loud aha and admiringly remarks that their dwelling has fixed itself. Someone replies that it is only on the outside. The orc and his daughter turn around at the sound of the voice. A whole crowd of elves have gathered there. One of them explains that the inside is still empty. Here, Nanoa notices Alicia and hides fearfully behind her father's back. The orc approaches the girl. Alicia apologizes for her behavior and for what she said. The girl timidly peeks out from behind Zaid. The elf joins in Alicia's words, informing her that they too have acted inappropriately and apologizes. The new house is an apology, a token of gratitude for the defense of the village, and a somewhat belated greeting. The elf asks for their forgiveness. Zaid lowers his head and then asks if they can pardon him. Alicia, after being quiet for a moment, honestly answers that she doesn't know. However, the elves don't want to be the adults who insult parents in front of their children, and so they did so. Nanoa rounds her eyes confusedly. One of the men promises that the dwelling will be ready in 3 days, and suggests that Zaid and his daughter stay in the elder's house for now. The elderly elf, smiling, adds that they will build such a sturdy dwelling that it can withstand an orc's sneeze. Nanoa steps out from behind Zaid and calls out loudly to the elves. She thanks them for fixing the house and bows low. They look at her in surprise. And then Alicia, who is touched, replies that it is they who should be thanked. Zaid is sitting on a stump in front of a stump. He is surrounded by 2 piles, one of firewood, the other of beams. The orc splits a log into several pieces with his bare hands and throws it into the right pile. Quickly enough, one pile grows larger. The elves watch Zaid's quick work admiringly. The man rather notices that the orc does everything faster than 10 elves combined. He politely asks if Zaid will help him move the building materials, because the warehouse burned down during the last battle. He nods and effortlessly throws several logs on his shoulder at once. The elves look off into the distance. The man exclaims happily that with the orc's support, the village can be rebuilt much faster. Cress peeks out timidly from behind the trees. His eyes shine with admiration. Remembering how Zaid dealt with Lich Ray, the boy decides that the orc is incredibly cool. Cress wants to be like Zaid in the future, a trustworthy and strong man who can be relied on and will not let him down. Cress wonders if it is possible to apprentice to an orc. He wants to find out how Zaid managed to become so strong, but there is a small problem. Zaid shifts the logs to his other shoulder and suddenly turns around sharply. Cress AHS. Quickly he hides behind a tree trunk. His heart is pounding desperately, and Zaid looks at the place where he noticed the movement. Cress is afraid to approach the orc and speak to him. Zaid is called by one of the elves. He tells him that they have come across a problem while traversing the forest. The elf anxiously asks if Zaid knows of a monster named Grizzly Bear. The orc shakes his head in the negative. The man explains that it is a monster of particular ferocity and voraciousness. The elves have discovered the mark of the grizzly bear not far from the village. The one-eyed man remarks that such a monster could not just suddenly appear in these parts. His companion adds that the monster most likely came from the northern dungeon. The biggest problem is that the grizzly bear alone could destroy the entire ecosystem of the forest. The elves want to ask Zaid for a favor. Deal with this monster. Normally Alicia, an adventurer from the city, would be assigned such tasks, but since the orc destroyed Ray in one blow, it is safer to ask him. Zaid replies briefly that he will do the job. The elves say they will carry the building materials themselves, but the orc refuses their help. Cress has been watching the conversation. He hides behind a tree. He wants very much to watch Zaid fight the grizzly bear. However, Cress knows very well that his sisters will be angry and very worried if he goes into the forest alone. But Cress decides that if he is afraid to go alone, he will definitely not be able to become a strong man. He's going to learn from Zaid. Cress does not know that he's being watched too. Nanoa peeks out from behind a tree. She notices that the boy is always watching her dad. Upon reflection, the girl decides that they are just playing Daruma Sankaranda. Nanoa wants to join them, too, and runs after Cress. The boy sneaks up behind Zaid. He is very scared. He notices that the forest is unusually quiet. Not even the birds are singing. The orc stops in front of a boulder. Cress is shocked to see the marks of huge claws on the surface of the rock. He realizes that all the animals in the forest have fled for fear of the grizzly bear. Zaid climbs onto the boulder and settles down on it. He removes his bag and rummages through it. Cress is watching Zaid's every move carefully. The boy decides that the orc is going to meet the grizzly bear right there. Cress is sure that Zaid has some kind of weapon or maybe traps stashed in his bag. But to the boy's great amazement, the orc retrieves a pair of spokes and calmly plunges into his knitting. The whole point is that Estelle told Zaid that being able to knit at least a little is useful. The orc already has a long enough cloth ready. He is completely engrossed in the process. Cress thinks that Zaid is relaxing in this way. The orc doesn't even mind that he's in the middle of a grizzly bear den. Zaid acts like he's in his own home. Cress is worried about the orc and hopes that he will be all right. The boy has read that the monster's claws can cut through even iron, and its hide can reflect bullets. He worries that the orc will have a hard time dealing with the grizzly bear without a weapon. Out of the tall grass, a rabbit shows itself. Zaid does not take his eyes off his occupation. Gradually, squirrels climb on top of the orc, and various birds fly around him. Cress is puzzled as to why the animals have come out of their hiding places. Looking at the orc's face, the boy realizes what is wrong. Zaid looks kind, calm, confident, and very trustworthy. Cress thinks the orc is a model of a real grown man. Behind the boy's back, Nanoa pops out from behind a tree and starts sneaking up on the unsuspecting Cress. He wonders if his father was like Zaid. Nanoa grabs the boy by the back with a joyous cry. He screams desperately. The birds fly away, and Zaid's head rises alarmingly. The girl laughs happily and the boy asks indignantly, "What's the matter?" Nanoa announces contentedly that she has won. Only Cress recognizes Zaid's daughter and confusedly asks what she is doing here. Nanoa explains that the boy was playing Daruma Sankaranda with her dad, and she wanted to join them. After hesitating, Cress admits that he was indeed following the orc, but he wasn't playing at all. Nanoa notices someone's silhouette next to them and decides it's Zaid. The boy hiccups fearfully. He doesn't know what to do, because the orc would probably be angry if he knew that Cress was following him. He turns around. Behind him is not Zaid at all, but a huge, bear-like creature. The beast is looking at the children. Nanoa realizes puzzled that she has made a mistake, and it is not Daddy. Cress screams in terror. Grizzly Bear growls fearfully. The frightened boy, trembling, falls to the ground. Then he notices that Nanoa is standing there with a smile on his face. Cress gets to his feet, telling the girl to run away, because it is not a human being in front of them. But Nanoa, to the boy's surprise, begins to growl as well. Cress thinks they are competing. Distracted by the boy, the grizzly bear turns to Nanoa. The monster growls perplexedly. A startled Cress pulls himself together, though, and takes out his staff. He points at the monster and, cackling, summons a fireball. The spell hits it right in the grizzly bear's face. Nanoa looks at Cress with admiration. He yells at her to run to Zaid. Out of the corner of his eye, the boy notices a huge clawed paw above him. He realizes that there is nothing he can do. There is no time left to summon a shield. Cress feels that he is about to be killed. Zaid suddenly appears, and with one blow, he knocks the grizzly bear to the ground. This one falls on his back. Tears of relief well up in Cress' eyes. Nanoa cheers. Grizzly Bear rises up and lunges at his opponent with a snarl. But no matter how hard this one tries, all of his attacks leave not a scratch on the orc's body. Grizzly Bear breathes heavily, exhausted, and it is Zaid's turn. One mighty blow, and the monster will never be a threat again. The orc turns around worriedly and asks Cress if he's all right. The one, stammering and crying, utters that he is saved. His bladder fails, and the boy's clothes get wet. Soon Cress's washed clothes are drying over the fire. The boy, wrapped in a towel, comes out of the water. He sobs quietly, ashamed of having embarrassed himself in front of the orc and his daughter. Zaid calls out to him, sternly asking why the boy was following him. Cress replies that he wanted to become as strong as an orc. Zaid and Nanoa look at him in surprise. Cress explains that after the death of his father, he was the only male in the family and just wanted to protect his sisters. In order to become strong, Cress was going to become an orc's apprentice. Zaid confusedly interjects. Cress whispers bitterly that he knows it is impossible. After such a disgrace, he will never be strong again. Tears roll down Cress's face again. Zaid briefly remarks that he does not agree. The boy looks at him with tearful eyes. Zaid reminds him that Cress has managed to protect Nanoa. The girl enthusiastically agrees, adding that the boy was very cool, and the fireball exploded so great. Cress timidly remarks that it didn't work out in the end. Zaid replies that a man's strength lies not in power, but in courage. Cress rounds his eyes in shock. The orc rubs his hair and thanks him, adding that he is grateful. Zaid asks Cress not to follow him anymore, and instead invites the boy to visit. The boy glows with happiness, and enthusiastically calls the orc his teacher. Zaid reminds him that he did not take him as his apprentice. A little later, the orc comes to the house of the elder. She is already sitting in her favorite chair, with Alicia standing next to her. Magdalena thanks Zaid for his labors and adds that all work goes much faster at this rate. Alicia embarrassedly apologizes for Cress' act and promises to have a stern talk with her brother. Zaid asks not to scold the boy too much, reminding him that although Cress is a child, he is still a man. Alicia smiles slightly and agrees, saying that she doesn't want to hurt Cress's pride too much, so she will only scold him a little. Magdalena remarks that it is too wasteful to use such power just to rebuild the settlement. She suggests that Zaid try to become an adventurer in the city. Zaid stares back at her in shock. In the middle of the city, a portal is activated. Alicia and Zaid appear in its place. The adventuress announces that they have arrived in a port city called Croft. She tells a bit more about the history of the place. In times of the Great War, Croft served as a military harbor. To support the front, the town underwent major expansion works. Now Croft is thriving, as all the logistics are tied to it. Alicia adds that because of the amount of people and money in the city, the number of problems grows. To deal with all these challenges, instead of a jaded regular army, adventurers were needed to take over guarding the civilians. Alicia announces that the Elves want Zaid to join the ranks of the adventurers. Zaid is fine with this, but is not sure he can handle it. Alicia hurries to cheer him up, promising that everything will be all right. The smith Lauren has forged something for Zaid. The orc now wears a helmet that completely hides his face. He follows Alicia, and passers-by look back at him. Behind the orc's back, gawkers are whispering. They're sure that the half-naked man in the iron mask is serious. Alicia turns back to Zaid. She explains that he will have this legend. He suffered a serious facial wound in the war and is embarrassed about it, so he has to wear a mask over his face. Alicia warns the orc not to remove his helmet under any circumstances. Zaid interjects about the embarrassment. The companions approach a store of elven magical goods. Alicia asks the orc to wait a bit. The girl needs to fulfill the delivery her sister assigned to her, and then they will head to the guild already. Alicia adds not to let Zaid go anywhere and promises that she will be back soon. She walks into the store. Zaid stands alone in the middle of the street and feels somewhat awkward. Suddenly something catches his attention. Some girl is surrounded by a few guys, and she lets out a loud, ah ha ha. The poor girl asks the men to stop, saying she feels uncomfortable. The man wonders what she doesn't like. He thinks he just wanted to invite the girl for a drink, which is not harassment, so he doesn't understand this reaction. The man's comrades agree, thinking the stranger is rude. They ask if the girl realizes who is in front of her. The poor girl is picked on by Gino, a B-class adventurer and former soldier. The man roughly grabs the girl by the chin, scooping up her head. He shows the scars on his face, saying he got it while fighting on the front lines of the war. Gino adds that he fought to protect everyone and anyone. Now he is an adventurer and continues to serve for the good of the community. Gino is outraged by the girl's ingratitude. The girl replies that she is very grateful to Gino, but she is at work right now. The adventurer yanks the girl towards him, shouting that he doesn't care. He demands proof of gratitude and sets his lips up for a kiss while the poor girl tries to break free. Just then Gino's heavy palm rests on his shoulder, and someone sharply orders him to stop. The adventurer turns around contemptuously, but then genuine horror appears on his face. A huge helmeted figure stands behind Gino and holds the adventurer tightly. He nervously tries to figure out what kind of pervert has gotten to him. His companions are also confused and don't know how to behave. Zaid turns to the girl and briefly tells her to leave as soon as possible. The poor girl's eyes brighten and she thanks her savior. Gino brushes the orc's hand off her shoulder and jumps away from him. He asks indignantly, why on earth would Zaid meddle in his affairs? Zaid replies that as much as he dislikes upsetting an incomprehensible adventurer, but the girl clearly didn't like him, which is why Zaid asked him to back off. Zaid looms over Gino and his companions. The remaining crowd laughs merrily, jeering at the adventurer as he blushes. Someone shouts out that Gino is really a round dummy and is no match for Rocco. Someone else offers to give the adventurer a discount on the mirror. He frowns and abruptly grabs the weapon on his belt. With a mighty blow, he chops a box in the way. The men back away in fear. Gino rushes to Zaid, angrily asking who does he think he is? Just because he's bigger than everyone else doesn't make him cooler than everyone else, the adventurer thinks. Gino calls out to his companions, and they hurry to join him, drawing their weapons as they go. Zaid stares at them in silence, but then a harsh shout makes the adventurer turn around. A furious Alicia asks him what he's doing here. She notices that the adventurer and his companions have dared to draw their swords and fight in front of people. Alicia promises to report this shameful spectacle to the head of the department if Gino and his cronies don't stop immediately. The adventurer clucks his tongue irritably, but he still puts the weapon away. Walking past Alicia, he throws that some filthy half-breed dares to cross a human. Alicia blushes with indignation, but holds back. Alicia looks after the departing Gino and his companions, then exhales. She apologizes to Zaid for the long wait and asks if she intervened for nothing. He replies that she has helped on the contrary. With a slight smile, the elven woman calls the orc a humble man. Zaid adds that he was afraid to strike back and finish the wretch off. Alicia laughs merrily. Zaid asks if the girl wants to put Gino in his place somehow. She gets serious in a flash. Alicia remarks that she often encounters such attitudes, especially after the war. However, she believes that if you pay attention to what every fool says, you can spend your whole life doing it. She gently touches her pointed ears. Soon Alicia and Zaid arrive at the Adventurers Guild branch in Croft. The girl is greeted cheerfully by the manager, informing her that they have been waiting for her. She greets him in return. She notices that it is unusually quiet. The man replies that it is because there is a terrible shortage of labor. He adds that he was looking forward to Alicia's return with that most promising newcomer. The manager turns to the orc, looking up and down at him. He notices that he must be the same Zaid who defeated the gang leader Ray. The man realizes that the newcomer has no magic, but notices his impressive physique. The manager jokingly says that Zaid looks more like an orc or a troll than a human, and laughs. Alicia laughs too. Zaid is silent. After laughing off, the manager decides to move on to the interview. He asks why Zaid decided to become an adventurer in the first place. The man replies that he has a 4-year-old daughter, and he wants the girl to not need anything. The manager realizes that his interlocutor is working away, so he asks if the little girl has stayed with her mother. Zaid informs him that his wife is dead, and the daughter is being looked after by an elf chieftain. The manager wonders if the girl will miss her father. Alicia intervenes in the conversation. She hastily reassures the man, saying that Zaid will not be living in the city. The elven woman adds that she will transport him by teleportation. This answer satisfies the manager. He writes something down, noting that there will be no problem with the road. The man looks up. Alicia looks at him tensely. The manager asks Zaid to remove his helmet since they are having an interview, for he wants to see the newcomer's face. The Elfis gives a strained smile. After a moment of silence, Zaid replies that he is shy. The man is surprised, then bursts into laughter. He laughingly asks how the owner of such a body could ever be embarrassed. Finally, the manager calls Zaid funny and announces that he has passed the interview. He slams the book shut and adds that what's left is the practical test. Given that Zaid was recommended by Alicia, a rank A adventuress, there's no doubt he'll do well, but rules are rules. The manager turns to Alicia and asks her for a demonstration fight. Alicia happily agrees, but suddenly someone stops her. Standing in the room is Gino. With a smirk, he remarks that if his own comrade fights against Zaid, it won't be a real test. Gino offers to test the newcomer himself. Alicia wants to say something, but the manager agrees with the adventurer. He invites everyone to go to the back training room. The rivals stand opposite each other. Gino smugly draws his weapon. Zaid calmly holds his sword. Alicia watches grimly, and the manager reminds them that this is only a training fight, so they should not maim each other. He adds that both opponents are not without talent, so there's nothing to worry about. The manager commands to begin. With a roar, Gino rushes into attack. Zaid stays where he is. The manager watches in surprise, and a sympathetic smile appears on Alicia's face. Although Gino is an experienced adventurer, he is certainly no match for the orc. Gino, meanwhile, pummels Zaid with a barrage of blows, backing up each of his actions with taunts and sneers. The orc takes it all calmly. Alicia is confused, and the manager doubtingly notes that the fight is a bit one-sided. Finally, Zaid draws his sword, but only parries Gino's attack. His opponent chuckles and asks why his opponent is shaking. The orc looks back at Alicia. The girl doesn't realize what happened. She thinks that Zaid is confused. Then the elf realizes that the orc is confused because any blow he throws will injure Gino. Alicia does not know what to do. The manager disappointedly remarks that shyness is fine, but without a fighting spirit, the newcomer will be useless. Gino snidely remarks that a huge body won't help Zaid if he's so slow. You can't be an adventurer with such a temperament. Gino clutches the handle of his weapon and orders Zaid to get out immediately. Jumping up, the man hits the orc with his sword as hard as he can on the head. The orc recoils. The manager says worriedly that it's not good and orders it to finish. Alicia, with her hands folded, calls out to Zaid. She shouts that it is not necessary to defeat Gino, only to demonstrate his strength. Understanding appears in the orc's eyes, and he intercepts the weapon. Zaid remembers tossing and catching a happily laughing Nanoa. The girl exclaimed happily that her daddy was very strong and asked him to do it again. The orc picks up the fallen sword and takes a step forward. Gino smiles tensely and wonders if Zaid wants to take more blows. He screams at the orc, attacking again and again. Zaid doesn't even move. He glares at Gino with a frown. The orc simply breaks the adventurer's sword in half. He looks at the broken sword with confusion. Stammering, he asks, "Who the hell does Zaid think he is?" Gritting his teeth angrily, he pulls the blade from behind his back and lashes out at the orc. The manager shouts in horror that Gino is a fool. The adventurer, meanwhile, uses the explosive dissector. A cloud of smoke obscures Zaid, but he calmly stays where he is. There's not a scratch on his body. What the shocked manager notices. Zaid grabs Gino by the shoulders with both hands. He nervously watches his opponent's actions. Zaid grimly announces that the hold is called flight. Yanking Gino, the orc forcefully sends the adventurer into the air, with his mouth hanging open in amazement. The man realizes he is flying and yet does not stop. He tensely turns around, determined to see how high he goes. With horror, Gino sees how small the city now seems. He realizes that he has flown too high, and now it's his turn to fall. The adventurer screams desperately. At breakneck speed, he approaches the ground. Gino lets go of his weapon. The man does not want to die at all. Zaid picks him up off the ground and offers to do it again. Gino falls to the ground, foam pouring from his mouth. The manager laughs heartily. He marvels at Zaid's power to launch a man so high into the air without any magic. The man wonders if the newcomer is definitely human and reaches for his helmet. Zaid briefly reminds her that she is shy. This causes another burst of laughter from the manager. Alicia smiles tiredly. After calming down, the man also notes that Zaid has not only strength, but also incredible stamina. Even a direct hit by magic didn't even leave a scratch on his body. The manager announces that the test is scored. He adds that with Zaid, even the soul is calmer, and it's a hot time for adventurers. The manager informs that he has a job for Alicia and the newcomer. The Client is an organization that united all mankind under one banner during the Great War, the Church of the Holy Cross. Astonished, Alicia listens intently. The manager adds that this is a major assignment in which the entire guild participates. Alicia drives the horses. In a wagon sits Zaid. The Elfis recalls what the manager told them. He said that not too long ago, a fire dragon settled on the southern mountain path that connects the capital to this city. Last week, this one attacked a trade caravan that was traveling from the capital. The losses due to the attack were huge. Alicia asked in surprise, where did this dragon even come from? The manager explained that during the war, many of these creatures were used by the demon army. The battles ended and the dragons scattered and went feral. That was most likely the fiery creature's fate. The Church of the Holy Cross has instructed the guild to secure the road until next week, for then the archbishop will arrive. The fire dragon is approximately 65 feet tall. Without the participation of S-rank adventurers, the Crofta branch will have to pull in all their resources. All except for Gino, who refused to help. They have already built a base at the site and are making preparations to battle the dragon. The manager knows that the enemy is not at all easy, and a week is too short a time, but there is nothing to be done. He is counting on Alicia and Zaid. Alicia recalls the manager's words aloud, emphasizing that 7 days is indeed too short. Alicia informs him that dragons tend to patrol their territory along the same route, so it is customary to build fortified firing positions and defensive lines right in the creature's path. However, this cannot be accomplished in a week, which means you will have to prepare for close combat. Zaid is silent. Alicia turns to him and asks what is wrong. Zaid clarifies, do they need to kill the dragon specifically or just chase this one away? Alicia explains that their goal is to ensure safety, so scaring the creature away will suffice. Dragons are not capable of building a civilization like humans or demons. However, that doesn't mean the creatures are stupid, so if you chase these ones away, they never come back. Alicia remarks that the best thing to do would be to kill the dragon, but they won't be able to do that with the current training and time. Zaid replies briefly that he understands. Alicia turns back to the road once more. She wonders if the orc wants to save the dragon's life. Suddenly, Alicia cries out. Zaid throws his head up. Alicia notices smoke rising from the direction of the base. She can't believe it and hurries her horses to get to the site faster. The wagon pulls up to the ruined base. Alicia is horrified by the scene. She hastily jumps down. She shouts to Zaid that there is no dragon in sight and asks him to help her with the wounded. The orc climbs out of the wagon. Alicia runs up to one of the adventurers. The one weakly speaks her name. Alicia promises that she will heal him now. Finding his strength, the wounded man shouts out that they must run, for the dragon is still here. Alicia freezes and slowly looks around. There is a huge creature looming over her. The dragon looks up at Alicia. She realizes that the creature is hiding its body by refracting the light. She cannot believe that the monster is even capable of such subtle and complex magic. The dragon manages to appear suddenly without making a single sound. Alicia realizes that this creature has been specially trained to participate in the war. The creature is ready to attack. Alicia frantically tries to summon a barrier. Opening its jaws, the dragon lunges at Alicia. The girl realizes that she will not have time to use the defense. Suddenly, Zaid throws Alicia and the wounded adventurer aside with a strong blow. The dragon grabs the orc in its teeth and closes its mouth, with only Zaid's hand sticking out of its mouth. Alicia desperately calls out to him. Suddenly, the orc's calm and confident voice comes from the dragon's mouth. He replies that everything is fine. Zaid pulls the creature's jaws apart with his hands and jumps to the ground. Alicia once again realizes how powerful the orc is. The dragon glares angrily with its eyes, growls and unleashes a jet of fire. Alicia realizes with horror that it is dragon flame. Alicia manages to summon a reflective barrier. The jet of fire hits the shield with such force that the girl loses her balance and falls to the ground. Alicia realizes that if she uses a normal barrier, the wounded will be killed by the flames. She doesn't know what she should do. The dragon turns its head. Alicia guesses that the creature is already preparing a second attack, and reusing the reflective shield would require too much mana. Zaid suddenly stands in front of her. He tells the elven woman to leave this battle to him. Alicia looks at him confused. The dragon releases a jet of fire. The orc literally waves the flames away. The creature looks at Zaid in shock. Alicia is equally amazed as the orc manages to fend off the dragon's breath with his bare hands. Zaid gets into a fighting stance and clenches his fist. The creature opens its jaws again. The orc lifts himself off the ground and slams his fist into the dragon's chin with force. Smoke billows from between the creature's clenched jaws. With a terrible snarl, the dragon throws its head up, blowing fire. Smoke comes out of its nostrils. The creature swishes its tail and lashes out with the tip. Zaid easily fends off the attack with his fist. The orc orders the dragon to stop, as if he were dealing with a common lizard. The dragon soars into the air, screaming, and flies away. Zaid stares after it. Alicia is shocked that the orc single-handedly chased the dragon away. A tent camp is set up at the side of the base. A campfire has been built in the center, and food is roasting on it. The same man who warned the enemy admires their newcomer. His comrade remarks that for the first time ever, Croft has a true S-rank adventurer. They offer Zaid to eat and drink as much as he likes. They have plenty of food, as the operation was planned for a week. One of the adventuresses says that there are no more enemies, so Zaid can take off that stuffy helmet. The orc is silent. Alicia hastily informs her that Zaid is a very shy person. But then the orc interrupts her and pulls off his helmet, adding that he is very hungry. Alicia cries out in horror. The rest of the adventurers stare in shock at Zaid's face. The man asks if he is an orc. Zaid replies that he is often confused with that. The adventurers exhale with relief and laugh, saying they do look alike. Someone remarks that he's already had time to freak out, even though the newcomer saved them. The adventurer timidly hopes that demons cannot appear in such a place. The man remembers that Alicia also called Zaid an orc and clarifies if it was a nickname. Alicia laughs with relief and replies that it is, for the resemblance is obvious. The fire burns brightly. The adventurers have already gone to bed. Zaid is pensively drinking something from a mug. Alicia asks if she can sit next to him. The orc nods, and soon the two of them are looking at the fire. Alicia thanks Zaid because he managed to protect everyone and no one died as a result. She adds that it turns out that the orc fought alongside the heroine. The orc remains silent. Alicia clarifies why Zaid looked so unsure of his strength as they rode toward the base. The orc takes a sip. He says that you have to fight to the death with those who cannot be negotiated with, and those who kill with obvious malice. However, fighting dragons are capable of understanding ordinary words. Alicia listens confusedly to Zaid. He adds that unnecessary killing is bad for his daughter's upbringing. A surprised Alicia laughs, noticing that the orc is right. She drinks too, and together with Zaid stays sitting by the fire. A week later, a smartly dressed man is impatiently waiting for someone. Finally, a carriage drives along the paving stones and stops in front of a building. The gentleman rushes to the arriving carriage, cheerfully greeting the guest and noting that he has come a long way. Bishop Belzel descends from the carriage. With a gracious smile on his face, he refuses all honors and says that it is he who should thank the mayor for honoring them with a meeting. The gentleman thinks to himself that the bishop is, as usual, surprisingly modest despite his imposing stature. Out loud, however, he remarks that it is surprising to see the clergyman himself in the city without any reason. The master asks what is so important that the bishop has come here. He replies that he has come to deliver a new instruction from Saint Cedric and His Holiness Pontiff, which has to do with interpreting the treatment of non-humans. A predatory smile appears on Bishop Belzel's face. Before Alicia and Zaid depart for the city, the elder asks the orc if she can teach Nanoa magic during his absence. She adds that the girl is Daria's daughter, which means she has vast reserves of mana slumbering within her. Magdalena remarks that whatever path Nanoa chooses in the future, it wouldn't hurt her to know a lot. Zaid bows his head and gives his consent. The elder stands in front of Cress and Nanoa. The girl timidly asks what magic even is. Cress reminds her how he used a fireball against a bear and says that is what magic is. Nanoa cheerfully remarks that it was very cool. The elder agrees that controlling water or fire is magic, but she cured the girl with it too. Magdalena explains that magic is the power to change the world through your will. The elder takes out his staff, which Nanoa stares at in fascination. Magdalena adds that if explained in simple terms, magic is the power to grant wishes. The elder creates figurines of various animals that hover above the children's heads. Nanoa enthusiastically exclaims that this is very interesting and she wants to learn how to use magic too. Magdalena suggests starting by opening the seal. She sends Nanoa to fetch a flower pot, and the girl briskly complies. The elder praises her, tells her to close her eyes, and visualize a murky, haze-like stream flowing inside Nanoa's body. Nanoa takes the pot with both hands and rolls her eyes with the effort, diligently imagining the smoke. Magdalena commands that Nanoa now try to slowly push this stream out of her palm and wrap the flower pot with it. Nanoa diligently follows the command and covers her eyes. She even lifts herself off the ground, shrouded in the haze. A sprout makes its way out of the pot. The elder tells her to keep a clear image of the blossoming flower in her mind. Nanoa tenses up. A halo flashes above her head. Magdalena watches the girl in shock. A bright light floods over her. The sprout from the pot is covered with large flowers. In addition, all the buds bloom around the girl. Cress enthusiastically shouts out that this is simply unbelievable. Nanoa has managed to make all the plants around her bloom. Nanoa timidly turns to Magdalena and asks if this means she has succeeded. The elder confirms her success and adds that magic is the ability to impose one's own imagination on the world. She suggests Nanoa look at the palms of her hands. Nanoa scrutinizes her hands, and Magdalena draws her attention to the glowing haze rising from her palms. The elder notes that once one realizes magic, it immediately becomes a part of her. The children listen to her words in shock. Magdalena adds that the girl is now able to control fire, create water, and summon wind. Smiling, the elder suggests Nanoa try it herself. Magdalena asks the girl what magic she would like to use. Nanoa exclaims happily that she knows. She wants to learn how to cure diseases like the elder. Magdalena listens intensely and covers her eyes. She notices that she is very pleased to hear this. Mentally, the elder regrets that she could only teach Daria destruction magic. Taking the girl by the hands, Magdalena suggests starting with the basics, healing magic. The elderly elf girl sits down heavily on a stone. The approaching man clarifies. Does she, Mrs. Rayon, have a backache again? She sighs in agreement, saying that the discomfort has been particularly bad lately. The elf offers to carry Mistress Rayon as it is his lunch hour. She gently refuses, saying that she will rest a bit, and then she can go again. Just then she notices a smiling Nanoa very close by. The man recognizes the orc's daughter. Mistress Rayon asks affectionately if the girl is walking. She remarks that the weather is beautiful today. Nanoa asks in surprise if the elf is ill. She laughs and replies that even true long-livers, who have been living for 200 years, start to feel sick all over their bodies. Nanoa happily replies that this is very good. Her words surprise Rayon Sama. Cress, chuckling awkwardly, hastily explains that Nanoa is just learning healing magic from an elder. Nanoa offers to help the Elfess. She tries to refuse, noting that the power of child magic is too low. Nanoa angrily informs her that there's a promotion going on right now. The first treatment is absolutely free. Sighing, Mrs. Rayon grudgingly agrees, explaining that it's not worth missing out on such a lucrative offer. Nanoa enthusiastically runs up to the elderly elf and gently takes her palm in his hands. The man frowningly asks the girl not to worsen Mistress Rayon's condition even more. Cress hurries to reassure him, explaining that Nanoa is being watched over by the elder herself. The elf interjects incredulously. The girl smiles concentratedly, holding the older woman's hand. She coos the words, "Pain, pain, fly away." Mrs. Rayon laughs, remembering playing doctor herself as a child, saying the same phrase. Light spills around the elf and Nanoa, the girl's hair fluttering. Mistress Rayon gasps. The surprised elf asks if the woman is all right. Because of the bright glow and the strong wind, neither he nor Cress can see anything. Finally, the light clears. Mrs. Rayon, somewhat disheveled, gropes herself uncertainly. She quietly remarks that this is simply incredible. The elderly elven woman jumps up high and happily announces that the pain that has plagued her for 30 years has vanished in an instant. In a happy voice, Mrs. Rayon marvels at the lightness of her body, now so unaccustomed. Nanoa smiles silently. The elf opens his mouth in amazement, and Cress is genuinely pleased. Nanoa approaches the man. Pointing to the scar on his face, he offers to heal that wound as well. He dismisses it, saying it is an old mark from the war. He adds that in 7 years the scar has long since healed. A flash of light, and now the elf is already shocked, touching his face, from which even the mark has disappeared. Mrs. Rayon cannot believe that Nanoa has managed to heal an old wound. Cress rather says that now they have seen for themselves how incredible Nanoa is. The elderly elven woman is sure it's all thanks to the heroine's blood that runs in Nanoa's veins. The man scratches his head and remarks that there is now a real healer in their village. The elf thanks the girl. The girl smilingly holds out her palm to him and tells him to give it to her. The man is perplexed. Nanoa cheerfully asks for payment. The elf reminds him of the offer, but the girl explains that the offer only applied to Mistress Rayon. The man agrees, since that's the case, and places a candy in the girl's hand. The satisfied Nanoa, stuffing the candy in her cheek, runs off merrily. Cress smiles and remarks that the girl is truly amazing. He explains that magic has little effect on elves, so treating them is difficult. Nanoa turns around and, jokingly wagging her finger at the boy, tells him that he should address her as you, or better yet, call her teacher. Cress blushes embarrassedly. Although the girl is a bit of a badass, she's still very sweet. Suddenly Nanoa lets out a loud gasp, and Cress opens her eyes. Both children freeze on the spot. On the ground in front of the children lies a motionless bird. Nanoa seriously remarks that this will be her new patient. After looking around, Cress realizes what has happened. He explains that the chick fell from a tree growing nearby. A nest can be seen on the branch. Cress turns again to Nanoa, who is already bent over the poor little bird. Smiling, she once again utters a refrain. Pain, pain, fly away. The chick, as if even cheerful, jumps up on its feet. This one squeaks loudly to the delight of the children. Nanoa hurries to encourage the bird, promising that they will now return this to the nest. Cress looks up and says that the branch is high enough that it is dangerous to climb up, so he will climb up. Cress takes out his staff and uses a levitation spell. In front of the admiring Nanoa, Cress, holding the chick carefully in his hands, flies straight to the nest. He's ready to put the former patient with his mom. Suddenly, she starts flapping her wings in an angry snarl. Cress recoils, trying to cover the baby from the blows with his beak. Nanoa does not understand what is going on there. All she can hear is Cress squeaking and screaming. Cress fails to return the chick to the nest, and it descends to the ground. Nanoa hurriedly approaches him, asking what is wrong. A distraught Cress explains that the mother bird is attacking the chick. Looking at the baby sitting in the palm of his hand, Cress decides that the chick might not have just fallen out of the nest. He adds that it must have been abandoned. Nanoa listens to his words perplexed. Cress continues, sadly reporting that sometimes birds throw out sick or weak chicks. The children look intently and sadly at the poor baby. Cress wonders what they should do, because even if they return the chick to the nest, it will be killed there. The sadness on Nanoa's face changes to determination. She has thought of a way to help. Zaid returns home and is accosted by his daughter. She greets him with joy, and there's a chick sitting on her head, and it's making noises. Zaid looks at it in confusion. Nanoa introduces her father to the chick and asks to say hello. The chick makes a joyful clucking sound. Zaid asks if it is a bird. Nanoa answers yes, and tells him that the mother bird abandoned the chick, and now this one cannot return home. And that's why she decided to nurture this one herself. She asks with a sad look, isn't it possible? Zaid looks at her carefully and answers why not. Nanoa thanks him and tells the chick that this one is very lucky. The chick makes a joyful clucking noise. Zaid asks if she will eat it. Nanoa replies that she will think about it when the chick is older. The girl spent all her time with the chick while walking, eating, cooking, while sleeping, and even while bathing. Night came. Zaid was sleeping, and at that moment Nanoa called out to him. The orc opened his eyes and asked what was wrong. Nanoa was holding a chick in her hands and crying bitterly. She stretched out her palms and reported that the chick wasn't moving and she had spent so much magic on it already. She looked at the immobile body with despair. Zaid was silent for a moment and took her to the elder. She looked sadly at the chick. Nanoa asked her to heal the chick, for she was failing. Magdalena sadly told her that she could not do it either. Nanoa asked again. The elder replied that the chick was already dead. Nanoa froze. Magdalena explained that healing magic heals wounds and relieves pain, but there is no magic that can restore life. Nanoa asked, turns out the chick is now with her mom. Zaid looked at his daughter in silence. She was talking about how they would never see each other again. Magdalena put the chick in Nanoa's hands and informed her to bury it. After all, that was what the chick wanted. Nanoa's eyes rounded. Bitter tears began to roll down her face. She began to cry exhaustedly, holding the chick in the palms of her hands. Magdalena gave her last words of encouragement, and the chick was buried near the village. Zaid and Nanoa prayed. Already going home, Nanoa, sitting on her father's neck, called out to him. Zaid asked what was wrong. She asked if he was sad when mom died. Zaid looked up at the stars and answered yes, very. Nanoa asked was it because he loved her a lot? Zaid replied that it was indeed, and that was why he was in a lot of pain. Tears were rolling in the girl's eyes again. Zaid explained that to love was a gift, but also a burden. Nanoa clung sadly to her father. Meanwhile, the elder sat in his favorite chair and reflected on the fact that this chick's life had faded to the present day. But even death could not resist excessive power, and that shining angelic halo that appeared above Nanoa's head. Even her mother never had that one. And this girl has even more angelic power than her mother. Magdalena feels that this needs to be properly considered. After a while, the adventurers gathered in front of the mine entrance. There were a great number of eyes glowing in the mine. Alicia picked up her sword and went to the entrance. A huge number of monsters were running towards her. Alicia pulled the sword in front of her and used the holy flame spell. The monsters began to burn alive. Alicia called out to Zaid and told him it was time. A boulder became visible from the mountain. Zaid lifted it above him and threw it towards the mine. The boulder blocked the passage. The man reported that it was a fine job. for when Zaid is with them, everything goes as it should. Another man announced that the cleanup of the abandoned monster mine was complete and that they had finished far ahead of schedule, and he asked the others how about a drink. Zaid replied that he had a daughter waiting for him at home. The man smiled and remarked that for Zaid, family came first as always. Alicia reproached the men that for once they too could not go out and go home like normal people. One of the men replied that he was just eating dinner with his wife tonight. In the meantime, the Mayor Croft was on the grounds. The mayor sat at the table with his hands cupping his head. A maid came up to him and addressed him with the words, "What a nuisance." The mayor replied yes. He knew the new bill was being promoted by a radical personality, but he didn't think it would go this far. The bishop was escorted into the mayor's office, and while sitting at his desk, the mayor asked about the recently mentioned non-humans and clarified if it was about elves and dwarves. If so, then the vulgar insults that were currently going around the city would now be legalized. Belzel took a sip of tea and reported that it had been decided by Saint Cedric and His Holiness Pontiff at the last ceremony that elves, dwarves, and other non-humans were to be considered demons. The mayor asked what? Belzel added that moreover this town is particularly closely associated with elves, and asked isn't it? After all, there are elves among the pharmacists, the teachers of the Magic Academy, and even among the adventurers. Belzel added that Pontiff was expressing concern that this city could be a breeding ground for heresy and a threat to humanity. The mayor put his hand forward and asked for a moment. He asked to the people of his town demons? After all, that's impossible. The mayor asked on what basis did Pontiff make such a judgment? Belzel got up from his chair, smiled, and asked again the basis, and then added, doesn't the creepy appearance of these people in itself prove that they are demons? The mayor asked, puzzled, what? And Belzel continued, because His Holiness Pontiff is aware that their close cooperation with these subhumans was the result of errors in the interpretation of the former Pontiff and treats it with understanding. And so it has been said that if Croft arrests all the elves and turns these over to the Order of Holy Oversight, the city will be forgiven all sins. The captured elves would be subjected to the Inquisition, forced to recognize themselves as demons, and then executed. The miserable state of these will be proof to the world that the slave races are the true demons. And the mayor, as the person in charge of this city, must prove his loyalty by supporting these measures. The mayor slammed his fist on the table and said that this is foolishness. After all, the elves and dwarves were their allies in the war between humans and elves. Without the dwarves' rugged equipment, they wouldn't have survived today, and the high elf Magdalene was the mentor of the heroine Daria herself. He asked, how could their battle comrades be pursued on such a ridiculous pretext? Belzel looked around the mayor carefully, climbed onto the table, and stared him straight in the face. Ridiculous, he asked. The mayor breathed nervously, staring into the eyes of his interlocutor, and then said that the words of Holiness Pontiff are the words of God, and how dare the mayor call it ridiculous? Belzel grinned and grabbed the mayor by his clothes and asked him if he was a heretic. The mayor shouted that he wasn't at all. After all, he believes in God. But, however, among the inhabitants there are those who are friends with elves and dwarves. And if they were forced to raise their hands against their friends, there would naturally be outrage. And he was only expressing that concern. Belzel smiled and realized what the mayor meant. He had said that raising a sword against those he considered a friend was indeed hard. But God, to test the faith of one saint. He took away all his possessions, destroyed his entire family, and struck him with many diseases. And even then that man did not hate God, but continued to believe, proving his devotion. By this he won the greatest joy of the Lord. And trials are only valuable when they cause more. He asked the mayor to transcend suffering and follow God's will, and to give it his all. Belzel believes that's what a true believer should be. They should all rejoice in their suffering. The mayor looked nervously in Belzel's direction. After a while, when the meeting was over, the mayor sat at his desk. A servant came up to him and said that she couldn't believe that the elves were demons. Even now, many in their town rely on the medicines that elves create, and her mother is one of those. The mayor tiredly replied that he understands. And it comes out that their enemy is the Church of the Holy Cross. During the war between humans and demons, the Church rallied humanity, becoming a banner of unity, and after the war, became too powerful. And now, in many countries, Pontiff's influence surpasses the power of the king himself. Going against the Church now is like declaring war on all of humanity. The mayor put his hands on the table and said that, as expected, this was a matter that could not be dealt with at his level. He asked the servants to prepare the carriage. They would have to go to the capital and ask His Majesty for a decision. The mayor glanced nervously out the window. He realized that the journey would be a long one. Meanwhile, Magdalena was giving a magic lesson. For her young charges, she told them that the power of magic is determined by the power of intention. Fighting spells are stronger when hostility is put into it. Healing spells are more effective when love is put into it. Nanoa interjected in surprise. Estelle complimented that hostility does not equal feeling hated. Nanoa repeated the word hate, and then said she didn't quite understand. Cress asked if she has an insect that she can't stand. Nanoa replied that she eats everything. Cress was surprised. Nanoa said to herself the magic of hate. It seems complicated to her. Magdalena laughed and said something to the effect that it could be put off. After all, it is the task of adults to use such spells. And she heard some kind of sound. She looked at the boys and ordered them to immediately hide in the underground food storehouse. The children looked at her, not realizing what was happening. Magdalena took the staff in her hands and ordered Estelle to immediately teleport to the city and call Zaid and the others. Estelle said her name confusedly, but at that very second, Magdalena teleported away, and an approaching metallic clang could be heard near the village. It was the bishop leading an army of crusaders behind him. With a smug smile, he looked at the surrounding non-humans. The villagers looked at this army in surprise and wondered if these were the Knights of the Holy Cross. After all, it wasn't often that one would see an order of mentors in the middle of nowhere. They assumed the knights were in pursuit of the Ray gang that Zaid had defeated. One of the elves asked the bishop if they were on patrol by chance. Belzel answered in the affirmative and added that rumors had reached him that dangerous non-humans were lurking in these parts. The villagers looked at each other and suggested that it must be because of Ray. But then one of the villagers added that if it was Ray's army, they would have dealt with the ones in their village long ago, so everything should be fine. Belzel interjected okay, then laughed and said that the non-humans were still here, and added that they're the ones with the disgusting ears, and there are so many of these. One of the knights attacked the elf. The other looked on in horror and asked, "What's going on?" But he was immediately impaled with a spear. The other elves were also attacked. The elf started to run away, and Belzel, propping up his glasses, said that he had waited 3 days and the mayor had not taken any action, which seems unfortunate to him. After all, the mayor lacks true faith, but it is the duty of the church to lead the lost lambs. He ordered the Order of Mentors to burn down the village of non-humans and exterminate all but the High Elves. There was a war cry, but immediately armed elves ran out to meet them. They wondered why they were called subhumans. After all, they had fought in the Great War between men and demons. And after that, the church wants to bring back the old discrimination again. One of the elves called these ones traitors. The mage charged a fireball at the knight, but the latter withstood the attack. The mage was astonished that it was impossible. Belzel spoke of how such pathetic magic would not work on knights blessed by a god. And then the bishop wished for the death of the elves. But magic swords flew towards the knight. The one repelled the attack and looked up into the sky in surprise. Magdalena towered above them. She asked why knights raise swords on the innocent. She asked Bishop Belzel to give an intelligible explanation for all this. Belzel stood silently. Then he whispered that God willed it. He gave the order for his troops to attack. Meanwhile, in the underground vault, Cress and Nanoa were sitting on the floor with their knees tucked up. Nanoa asked why they shouldn't go outside. Cress fearfully replied that he didn't know, and then added that he had never seen an elder with such a stern face, and there must be something bad going on outside. He suggested just sitting quietly and hoped that the others would be all right. But the boys were startled by some extraneous sound, and they wondered who was out there. Suddenly, a small bubble started to appear on the floor, and then it got bigger and made a gurgling sound. And something that looked like a slug appeared in front of the children. It burst, and a girl appeared in front of the children. She turned to Nanoa and said that if they didn't help Magdalene now, they probably wouldn't make it. Nanoa looked at the girl with surprise. To be continued. Thanks for watching. Write your feedback in the comments. If you like the story, please like and subscribe. See you soon.